Zach, we are back, and we are talking moves to make or not heading into week 3 after a rough week 2. The injuries keep coming, the hits don't stop, and our hits don't stop either. And I hope your likes don't stop. Leave a like down below, comment down below as well the moves you are trying to make this week. Let us know. We want to hear all about it. The moves you are making. How is your season going so far? We want to hear all about it. And we want to see you over in that Discord as well, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Come hang out with us and enjoy a rompous and ruckus group chat on game day. Getting to the content that people came for. First segment here, your first move to make. What do you got for us? Tell us why and how you're doing it.
Yeah, Bob, I think it's time to officially put the seal of approval on Sam Darnold. He is this year's Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. I had thought it was going to be Bryce Young. That's not going well, apparently. Let's talk a little bit about the Vikings and Sam Darnold just for a second. Not fantasy, real life NFL-wise. The Vikings are 2-0 against two pretty good defenses thus far, and everybody was talking about the gauntlet to start the regular season, their first 5 opponents. And everybody was pegging J.J. McCarthy to be the starting quarterback after their Week 6 bye. And lo and behold, the Vikings, who I think a lot of people had as a bottom 5, bottom 10 team, team finishing with a top 10 pick in the NFL draft order, where they're 2-0 right now with wins against the Giants and against the 49ers. And I'm going to talk about what Sam Darnold did against the 49ers in just a second. But look, they've got 3 interesting games coming up against really good defenses, Houston, Green Bay, and the New York Jets. So there's a potential, buy low window on Sam Darnold, if you want to put it that way. Maybe you don't want to buy it today off of such a good performance from Sam Darnold, but it could be even harder next week if he goes out and does what he did to San Francisco against Houston, which is kind of a very similar defense. So, but let's talk about what Sam Darnold did yesterday. Right now, he's quarterback 9 on the season. That's without the Monday night games being played, as that's when we're recording this. No Justin Jefferson yesterday at a certain point in the game. No Justin Jefferson to end the game. No Jordan Addison. No TJ Hawkinson. Sam Darnold leads a 7-minute drive, converting 3 third downs against the NFC champion defense in the San Francisco 49ers to take a 2-possession lead. I mean, that is closing. That's what teams can't do to Patrick Mahomes. You know those situations where teams give Patrick Mahomes the ball back with a chance to win the game? Well, Sam Darnold didn't do that yesterday to the 49ers. He put that game away with a 7-minute drive with nobody on the field that anybody is starting in fantasy unless you're in an incredibly deep league and you're starting Jalen Naylor, okay? What Sam Darnold doing is very impressive to start the season. And, you're seeing some incredible throws from Sam Darnold. I think the thing with him has always been kind of, he's been bit by the injury bug, but maybe we'll talk about coaching in just a little bit. But I was looking at some recent trades, Bob, and I mean recent. I plugged in yesterday and today as the Dynasty Daddy, a trade search finder. I didn't want to look last week. I didn't want to look on Thursday. I looked yesterday and today. And as a matter of fact, all the trades that I pulled are from today, which we're recording this before Monday Night Football. So this is a very accurate picture of what people are buying and selling Sam Darnold for. Sam Darnold for Adonai Mitchell straight up. Sam Darnold and a 25 third for Bryce Young. Would you do that one? I would do that one.
I mean, you mean selling Bryce Young for Darnold and the pick? That's what you want to do on that deal, right?
I would take Darnold and the pick.
Right, yeah. I'd have a tough time stomaching a third with Darnold, but if I could get a second, I'd be pretty happy with it at this point.
I think you could have done that 2 weeks ago. I just don't think after what you've seen from 2 weeks, you can get a second.
Yeah, it's tough sledding right now with Bryce Young, and that entire offense is a mess, and that team is a mess right now. But go ahead, Zach, continue.
I saw Sam Darnold for a 25 second round pick. Then I saw Sam Darnold for a cornucopia of picks, a 27 second and 26 and 27 third. So, I mean, that's 3 years away, that second round pick. And then Sam Darnold for Nick Chubb. All these trades, if I was in a competitive situation and I needed another quarterback, my quarterback 2 or even my quarterback 3 was a Bryce Young or was a Gardner Minshew, I want to upgrade to Sam Darnold because not only is he secure for this entire season, albeit health, we can never predict health on anything we do here. But I really like at this point, it's trajecting towards him getting some kind of a Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith contract after the season, whether that be with the Vikings or whether that be with someone else. There's so many teams out there that need a quarterback. You look at the Raiders, you look at the Panthers. There are more teams that I'm not even thinking of off the top of my head that will need a quarterback next year. And it's not necessarily a good quarterback draft, Bob, and you know that. So, this is an opportunity to get in a little bit lower than what you potentially should be able to for a quarterback that's producing at his level right now. I want to let you get in, your counterpoint here, and I want to talk about coaching after you do that. So go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and I think a coaching plays a big part of how I want to proceed with Darnold, because if he's not on this team, I don't want Sam Darnold, because everything leading up to this point for Sam Darnold has not been good, and he hasn't had good coaching. There's something to be said for that with a lot of systems in the NFL. If you don't have a good coach, there's just a cap on what can realistically be expected of you. But my side note here was, if Sam Darnold can run this offense and excel, JJ McCarthy is a massive buy/stash for rebuilding teams. As much as there's question marks with JJ McCarthy, good Lord, was there question marks with Sam Darnold coming into this year. And I have very little doubt in my mind that JJ McCarthy could do what Sam Darnold is doing. There's something to be said for the experience that Sam Darnold has, good and bad, coming into this year. But JJ McCarthy has to be on your radar for rebuilding teams to buy, stash if you have him. Don't trade him away. We talked about that a few weeks ago, just not trading him away for just a re-roll in 2025. But my thing with Darnold, and there's absolutely going to be opportunity for him, most likely somewhere else, unless he's willing to sign a backup contract deal in Minnesota. That could be in the cards. I think he's probably going to chase for more. And if that's the case, I don't want him in a non-Kevin O'Connell offense, because I barely trusted him coming into this. He's been able to execute this Kevin O'Connell offense. I'd love to buy him at these costs, and then if he does lock down a good deal, possibly sell him for more. I know we don't always want to do that, but that's my concern when it comes to Sam Darnold.
One last thing before you get to your point, Bob. Top 5 scorers, and this may or may not be updated with the 4:00 games. This was, I think, after the 1:00 games yesterday. Top 5 fantasy quarterback scorers after the 1:00 games yesterday: Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones. There is
just how we drew it up.
I think one thing that I'm always trying to evolve my process, and I think one thing I'm going to do in the offseason is pay more attention to coaching. And look, there's obviously you're never going to be 100% on that. Right? That Bryce Young is not being elevated by Dave Canales right now, and maybe that's just the Bryce Young is that bad. We don't know that just yet. But this for me is something I'm looking at this season, and I'm saying, what can I do better next season? And for me, it's pay attention to coaching, because there's obviously some very good coaching happening right now. Look, maybe things change. Maybe defenses catch up to what the quarterbacks or the systems are doing. But it's just something to pay attention to. That's all I wanted to do here. I'm not saying, next season find the best schemes. Right now, coaching is making a huge difference on a lot of quarterbacks. Derek Carr, they've scored 90 points in the first 2 games, and they're blowing teams out. Geno Smith is looking great. Baker Mayfield, I was so wrong. I sold a lot of my Baker Mayfield shares, and man, was I wrong on that one. So just something I wanted to pinpoint, not anything we have to go back and forth, but something that I might be paying attention to more next season, something that I'm always I'm going to evolve my process, maybe start paying attention to, systems and quarterbacks that fit better systems moving forward into the future.
And I think there's just something to be said for, as much as we like to talk up kind of buying low on the running backs in the offseason, a lot of those quarterbacks that you just mentioned going for peanuts in the offseason. So maybe just taking a bit of a shotgun approach and just, hey, man, let's see what happens. Build up some picks, and just kind of, especially if you're in a competitive state, if you're rebuilding, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it. But, yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Quarterbacks, possibly buying value and buying coaching. When you buy players, buy the coaching. That's sometimes where you can highlight good buy windows. Possibly sell windows as well. But moving out of this next segment here, I kind of jumbled up our script today, Zach. We're doing things a little different. Trying to work in some segments, some Q&A, whatever the case is. So a popular question kind of been floating around the Discord. If you're interested in the Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Link is in the description, as well as the pinned comment on the YouTube video. But we got some quarterback issues going on. We got Tua set to miss time. We got Jordan Love still on the mend, aiming for a week 5 comeback. And several quarterbacks that we just expected more from that are off to slower starts. We might want to find ways to kind of fix this issue we have, make a move to fix these problems. Are you buying in on guys like you just mentioned, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, or would you rather target a Band-Aid that I believe in as a Band-Aid? So I put Band-Aid in quotes on the show sheet, in Sam Darnold, like you previously just mentioned. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are you looking to do to maybe fix your quarterback? Is there another way to do that out there right now? What do you think?
I actually do have quite a few shares of Derek Carr's and Sam Darnold's. As a matter of fact, in our Rewinders League, I have both. So after what you've seen after 2 weeks, it's tough to go off a 2-week sample size, but it's also like, you're looking for traits, and the things that Derek Carr and guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield have shown you that they can be an answer for you for this season. There's things are always changing. I haven't really analyzed what's going on with the Bucs yet, because I thought the Bucs losing Dave Canales would be a big, like, that Dave Canales thing is much more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was really going to work out for the Panthers and really work against the Bucs, and it's been anything but. And I know you're going to talk about Godwin in a second, but they made some personnel moves in terms of where they're lining up their wide receivers. So I need to take a look at that situation better. To have these guys as Band-Aids, I think it's great. You could even extend that to a Gardner Minshew, who, I think he only scored 15 fantasy points this week, but what does it cost to get a Gardner Minshew? They won. They beat the Ravens. And Bob, you were there in the Discord when I said Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback after they signed him in free agency. They're not going back to Aiden O'Connell unless there's some kind of injury, because Gardner Minshew is good enough to just be mediocre. And unfortunately, Aiden O'Connell is not. Like, Aiden O'Connell is just a dude. So, to me, there's security in buying these guys. They're 1-year answers at this point. You can never look at Derek Carr and say, that's my like a Josh Allen, where that's my quarterback for the next 5 years. You can't do that with the Derek Carr. You can't do that with the Sam Darnold, at least right now with his contract situation. So yeah, I would buy in on these guys if the price is right. But the problem with that is the price might be increasing a little bit. And that's why I put buy Sam Darnold as my first point, because there might be a window in the next 3 weeks, but they're playing really good football. Brian Flores has that defense playing so good, and it's keeping the offense in games. It's giving the offense short fields. Like, it's not like Minnesota's throwing for 500 yards of total offense. No, their defense and their special teams are setting them up with short fields, and Sam Darnold is converting. So, yeah, I would take a shot on some of these guys if you need a quarterback. There's been some injuries, obviously, with Tua and Jordan Love. There's going to be more. There's going to be more. And so, for me, I'm always, and I'm going to talk about this again later with one of my other points, is I'm always preparing for these situations. I don't want to wait for these situations to happen, because then it's more expensive. I have a lot of Sam Darnold and Derek Carr because they are my quarterback 3s and 4s in a lot of leagues. And right now they might be my quarterback 1s. So who knows? But yeah, I am definitely buying into these quarterbacks as Band-Aids, but I'm only looking at them in a 1-year snapshot, Bob.
Yeah, I would honestly say that I feel like we can look at Baker Mayfield in a bit of a longer lens, at least in this discussion of who we've kind of brought up. Baker Mayfield, I feel pretty good about for a good chunk of time. Derek Carr, right now, looks really good. Clint Kubiak was an offensive coordinator hire that Noah and I loved. We loved him for Chris Olave. That hasn't quite panned out yet. He got a little more involved yesterday, but love Clint Kubiak. Love what he's done with that offense, increasing the motion, the pre-snap motion from where they were last year. Now they're up to the most pre-snap motion before every play. So you love to see that. That helps create mismatches and just, makes defenses have to sit back on their heels that little bit before a play, as opposed to being able to dig their heels in and or whatever. You get what I'm saying. But Baker Mayfield is certainly a buy for me. It kind of depends on what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do. If I have 3 set quarterbacks already, I'm just kind of dealing with injuries I want to fill in. I'm looking for the cheapest quarterback that I can find. Maybe a Gardner Minshew, maybe Sam Darnold. And like I said before the season, I know Derek Carr. I had Derek Carr, and I could not sell him for nothing to anybody. Nobody wanted Derek Carr. And I feel the same way that I didn't have any Baker Mayfield shares kicking around, but I felt like most people weren't super interested in him either. I know, like you mentioned, we were kind of concerned with the impact Dave Canales was going to have, but Liam Cohen has come in and done a great job filling in that offensive coordinator role for Tampa Bay and keeping that thing humming, maybe even better. Who knows? So for me, definitely interested in Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold is more so on the cusp of if I just need help right now, maybe not later. But like you noted, Sam Darnold's off to a hot start, and you can't ignore it anymore. Fact of the matter is you cannot. So definitely want to get some help with the quarterbacks. And I know I need help because I have Love in a couple and I have Tua in a lot. So I'm going to be knocking on some doors for some quarterbacks here and there. And another player I'm going to be knocking on some doors for, and I think is a great buy if you need any type of wide receiver help. If you are missing T. Higgins, if you are missing A.J. Brown again this week, if you are missing anybody, if you're missing Puka Nacua, Chris Godwin might be one of the best buys you can make at this point in the season. Coming into the season, obviously, was a great buy. We saw a lot of hype, I guess you could say, on him about him getting more work in the slot. He's actually been utilized pretty much all over the place. One of the best things about Chris Godwin is his 32% target share so far this season. I understand it's only been 2 games, but that's nothing to scoff at. Anything over 25 is good. Like that's what we really want to see about with a number 1 wide receiver in an offense. 15 to 16 receptions caught, perfect passer rating when targeted, and he's lining up all over the field. This is the stuff you love to see from wide receivers who especially primarily feed on receptions. He actually had a couple long plays this game, which was nice to see. But from guys that we like to call PPR magnets, like Chris Godwin is, you love to see these guys line up all over the field and get a bunch of mismatches. Great thing about him, too, no bye week until week 11. So you get to slot this guy in your lineup in a flex in your wide receiver 2 or 3 even and be super happy with him. All about Chris Godwin. Looking at trades, still plenty affordable in my opinion. Recent trades that just happened today, Zach. Chris Godwin for a 25 second and a 26 third. All about it. A 25 first for Chris Godwin, but you also get a plus on top. In this deal, it was Jordan Mason, which, man, for a competitive team, that's kind of fun, especially if you have Christian McCaffrey. I would call that an absolute win because you get to lock up your halfback. And Christian McCaffrey on IR since we've last talked to y'all, and is even possibly set to miss more than the minimum 4 weeks. So that's definitely more interesting than it seemed to be with Jordan Mason originally. Sounded like it was going to be a 2-week fill-in. He might be kicking around for a long time this season. So, and then the last one I got for y'all, Chris Godwin for Javonte Williams, who had a better week this week, and Treylon Burks, who is still nothing to no one, at least in fantasy's sake, unfortunately, for those who drafted him early. Not myself, but I know there's folks out there, and I get it. So Chris Godwin, easy buy for me. These are just starter deals. That second and third is a great price point. I think you send 2 assets for 1, you get a great contributor in the meantime for whatever ails you have across your flex spots. Whether you're hurting at running back, you can move up one of your running backs in your main slot and put Chris Godwin right into your flex. Maybe I slotted him in for AJ Brown this week, and I was kind of hemming and hawing about it and kind of upset. But, at the end of the day, I went and I was like, Chris Godwin's been fine. And hey, it ended up good. Hindsight's 2020, I guess. But either way, I was plenty happy with that swap. And not that I, was making the decision at the time between whether to sit AJ Brown. He was out, but you get what I'm saying. He was my emergency quote unquote fill-in. But either way, Chris Godwin, I am all about. This offense is humming, and I want as many pieces as I can get. And the best part about Chris Godwin, he's a little younger still. He's not going to be out of the league next year. He's a guy that, when we talk about going all in and making the mistake of going all in for players who don't have much longevity, Chris Godwin has that, in my opinion. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts before we move on to your next point.
Yeah, Chris Godwin, by the way, somebody we talked about in the offseason because of the reported move back to the slot. I want to give you some more statistics to back up your point here, Bob. In 2023, Chris Godwin played only 35% of his snaps from the slot. He averaged 1.7 yards per route run and had a 64% catch rate. So far in 2024, 65% of his snaps are from the slot, so almost double. He's averaging 3.92 yards per route run, which is more than double. and he has a 94% catch rate through 2 weeks. 15 catchable targets, 15 receptions, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, Bob. And he is the only fantasy wide receiver who scored 20-plus points in both week 1 and week 2. So, yeah, I'm with you, bud. I'm with you. Just like things like we talked about in point number 1, hey, maybe we need to pay more attention to coaching. We need to pay more attention to players and being better utilized in their schemes. I think that's really how we, in the offseason of 2024, Bob, can take our dynasty games to the next level.
Why don't you kick it on into your next point here? Talking another very important move to make before it's too late, because this is one that can bite you right in the bum real quick. Bite you in the backside, if you know what I'm saying. Zach, go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, and look, this is something we definitely have talked about before, and I just feel like it's worth re-emphasizing again, because we're getting to that point where we are getting a large volume of injuries, especially at the running back position. And so for me, I'm prioritizing my running back depth or my handcuffs. We've already seen big time injuries at the running back position and their handcuffs benefiting, Bob. We talk about CMC to Jordan Mason, who's almost had 2 back-to-back 20-point weeks in fantasy. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet scored a touchdown yesterday. Now we're talking about Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know who the handcuff is there. I probably lean more towards Carson Steele than I would Samaje Perine getting a fuller workload. I'm not 100% sure there. But this is something that specifically I have been preaching a lot, is you don't want to wait to the point to where you get to these injuries. Start looking at your running backs. Do you have depth to fill in, or do you have their handcuff to fill in to buy you 2-3 weeks to get you to when that player comes back? Because my goodness, I have 3 to 4 CMC shares, and on 2 of those, I think I have Jordan Mason, and I am so thankful that I do. And on 1 or 2 of those, I don't. And I'm very annoyed at it because I didn't practice what I preached. I didn't have especially my main running back, my big time, big investment running back. I didn't have the handcuff. How stupid of me, because now I need to figure it out or try to go buy somebody and probably pay a little bit more than what I want to. There are several other running back handcuffs that you could have out there, Bob, that still present a lot of value to you if you were to suffer an injury. We think of like Kyron Williams. I think it'd be really smart to have Blake Corum just in case anything happened. Breece Hall, we saw Braylon Allen yesterday be very involved in the passing game. And so I still think that's a handcuff I absolutely want if I have Breece Hall. Another one, I think you're going to like this one, especially because we're starting to see a pattern with his inability to be efficient running the ball, is Rachaad White. And having Bucky Irving, who's been pretty good so far when given the opportunity this season. So go out there. I can't tell you what the price points are just because there's so many different running backs to talk about there. But to me, it is very worth the investment to have my handcuffs, even if they end up not being utilized this entire season, because I have that. It's like an insurance policy. I have that in case there's some kind of big injury. There's some running backs where it's hard. Like, do I want Austin Eckler if Brian Robinson is not there? Not really. But there are some, like we mentioned, Blake Corum, Bucky Irving, that I actually really do want. I'd prioritize if I had those starting running backs on my team. So prioritizing your running back depth or prioritizing handcuffs to make sure you're not in the spot where you're trying to buy a player in any given week. I had somebody come today. They suffered an Isaiah Pacheco injury. I got one of the worst offers I've ever seen in my life. I don't want to talk about it, but it was for Brian Robinson. And in my mind, I'm just saying, you waited too long. You didn't have any backup plan. And so now you're trying to come at me with a terrible offer. It was Isaac Orendo in a 3rd-round pick. I know I said I didn't want to talk about it, but I'm talking about it. Yeah, okay. And so, look, that's a situation where somebody's obviously desperate. They're just sending out offers, hoping somebody will click the accept button.
Yeah, this is a great point, Zach. I mean, this is one where you don't want to get behind the cat's tail on this one. You want to make sure that you are locked and loaded at running back, because it'll bite you in the butt before too long. And that kind of leads us right into our next Q&A here. Bit of a discussion again going on in the Discord that we talked about. Are you interested in Samaje Perine or Carson Steele, seeing that Isaiah Pacheco is set to miss time And it does not sound good to me how long it looks like he's going to miss. Everything I saw, I'm not a doctor, but looking up fractured fibulas, not images, thank God, but looking up, the set time that players are expected to miss 10 to 12 weeks just to recover from surgery. Then there's rehab involved too. That's another month on top. I don't know if we see Isaiah Pacheco the rest of the regular season. So strap in, wait for proper news to come out, wait for like a full thing to come out. It has not happened yet for us. We just know that it's fractured fibula. We don't know the full extent yet. They're doing more tests. But do we have a preference between these two, between Samaje Perine or Carson Steele, or is the right answer just neither? Like you kind of talked about there, Zach, with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. What do you think with these two?
Right now, it feels like neither. Somebody's got to get the work in that backfield, though. But we saw that offense have a lot of trouble moving the ball yesterday. And I don't know if that's going to – the Kansas City Chiefs are very interesting right now. They're suffering from a lot of injuries at the skill position players, most notably Hollywood Brown. Now we can put Isaiah Pacheco on there. We don't know the full extent of that injury. As of recording this, that news might be out by the time this video comes out. We don't know it right now. They might go out and go get somebody. They might bring somebody in. That's something that I'm keeping my eye on. Can I say that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to rely on Carson Steele or Samaje Perine? No. I think that they would be smart to bring somebody in. There's still guys out there. There's guys we don't want to talk about out there. There's Dalvin Cook's still on the practice squad. Leonard Fournette is still out there. I'm sure there's a lot of other running backs that we're not even talking about that are still available or that are on other people's practice squads. All I'm saying is there's a lot to TBD as to who they could bring in or who gets to work in that backfield. I'm not investing anything in Carson Steele or Samaje Perine at this moment. That for me is something I need to see happen for me to invest in, unless it's like a 5th round pick. I'll throw a 5th round pick for Carson Steele. I'm not giving you anything of worth until I know and I have security that is the player that's going to be more featured. I'm going to use air quotes there, featured in that offense. So there's nothing I feel secure about right now in that backfield. And like you said, this is a wait and see approach for me.
Would you throw some fab on these guys if they happen to be out on waivers in your league?
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, I have a couple of Carson Steele shares as is, just because you got a taxi squad, got to use it if he's available. Yeah, throw some fab. Why not? But
sure,
don't spend a big amount of it without knowing. That there's just so much unknown about what the situation is in that backfield. So be careful. Don't. He's gonna get that Kansas City price hike. Because he's on the Chiefs. Sure. Don't do that. Don't be that. Let somebody else do that. That's something you could let one of your other league mates do, and it'll be to your advantage, I think.
Yeah, if there was a move to make for me here, I would say I prefer Perine. Gun to my head, that's my preference. It all in the 2 Chiefs games that I've watched, the fact that they keep calling Carson Steele a fullback always kind of like sets up red flags or red sirens in my ears, whatever the case is. Triggers red flags, however you want to put it. So the right answer for me is going to be neither, ultimately, at the end of the day. And that's because, in my opinion, there's still plenty of affordable running backs out there who should offer us less of a headache, that are still accessible. Tony Pollard, James Conner, still 2 of those backs I like a good bit. Tony Pollard is probably the cheaper of the 2, especially now with Tyjae Spears' injury happening. Don't know the extent of that either yet. We don't have a full report, but just that he left early with an ankle injury and did not return. I still don't think that, hampers Tony Pollard at all. That doesn't change the story with Tony Pollard at this point. So those are 2 guys I'd be looking to get. You probably need to pay a little bit more than a second to go get them, something in the realm of those values. But the thing is with every passing week, there are going to be more and more teams that are possibly changing their trajectory. They're changing their mindset to look to next year. So just because when you looked in week 1 and these players were on 1-0 teams, 0-1 teams, now they're on 1-1 teams or 0-2 teams, things change quick. And if there's anything I know about fantasy players in general, is that we're a bunch of knee-jerk reaction mofos. We love to overreact and underreact. Just don't be afraid to go knock on some doors for somebody that you thought was a locked-in contender from week 1, has a crap week 2. Things can change real quick. People can change their minds really quick when it comes to these scenarios. So with that said, Zach, rolling on into our last segment here and kind of talking about overreactions, underreactions. It's still early in the season. I don't want to strike panic or fear into anyone, but just some things to keep an eye on. Is there a player that you're not necessarily panicking on? Like I said, we don't want to panic, but we are trying to get off our roster by any means necessary. We're kind of at that point where we're saying, man, if I could get this, I'm golden. I'm out, willing to sell. What are you looking to get for that player? Who's a player that sticks out to you that you're kind of willing, ready, and able to move off of the second you can?
Well, I think we talked about this earlier. The perfect person for this list is Bryce Young.
Yeah.
I mean, this sucks. I thought that Dave Canales was going to come in and fix Bryce Young. I don't know what's happening there. I don't think anybody knows what's happening there, because you're seeing some of these plays, and it's like, this is so easy. You know, that play that's all over Twitter right now where he gets blasted on the sideline. It's like, why didn't you just throw it away? You know, I don't know what's happening there. I can't tell you. I don't have any good opinion. All I know is what we talked about earlier. I'm seeing Baker Mayfield still doing well. I'm seeing Geno Smith still doing well without Dave Canales. And now I'm seeing Bryce Young not be any better than last season. No better than last season, which makes me curious about that situation. So, to make a long story short, I'd put Bryce Young on that list. Somebody I'm kind of panicking about right now is Evan Ingram. I'm not sure if it's too early there. Really only one game. And obviously he suffered some kind of a tweak to the hamstring in week 2. That offense has looked terrible without having him to be featured. So at least there's that, right? I can say, well, the offense is not doing well without him, so they need him. At least I can say that. But, maybe the 1 to 2 years we saw out of Evan Ingram was the exception to the rule of what Evan Ingram is. So those are 2 guys that I can think of off the top of my list. And then 2 other guys I just want to throw at you. I don't have a strong opinion either way. One may be a way too early panic on. One is Rachaad White. Again, we talked about him. Yeah. Not loving that he is very, very, like 1.8 yards per carry yesterday. I know he suffered a groin injury. Definitely came back. Still part of the passing game, but Bucky Irving is going in there and doing fine on the ground, which is a little concerning. And then this may be the way too early panic. You tell me, Bob. Sam Laporta. I'm not saying sell Sam Laporta. I just want to get your feel. I want to get your temperature on Sam Laporta, because Jameson Williams is a thing. And then yesterday, Amon-Ra got 19 targets. So, for what you had to pay for Sam Laporta, you're not getting the return right now, and you're not getting any kind of a return. You're not even getting tight end 1 type of return, because he's not being featured at all. And now that Jameson Williams is there and he's a thing, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Jameson Williams, it's David Montgomery, it's Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta. So, just for the price you paid is the reason why I have Sam Laporta just being mentioned in here. I'm not saying sell. I'm not saying panic. I just want to get your temperature on it, because I'm starting to get worried there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, we had similar concerns, issues with Amon-Ra St. Brown after last week, not being super involved, and then we see him get over involved, some would say, this week, getting a ton of work. I think it's coming for Sam Laporta. I think it's just one of those that tight ends right now are not gelled. Like, the top list of tight ends is still outside of Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers has been great. He's getting a ton of receptions and targets, the whole 9. But you guys got guys like Hunter Henry kicking around, Mike Gesicki, Jonnu Smith, Luke Schoonmaker, kicking around, doing things that nobody really pegged coming into the year. I think it's just taking time for these tight ends, especially these top tier ones that are fixtures in their offenses, to get gelled. And if we don't see anything by like week 4, I'll really start being like, okay, this is a problem, because like you said, you did pay a lot to get him. Unless you still just have him from when you drafted him, when he was like a late second round pick, then you're still probably then definitely do not panic. But if you just spent a lot to get him, I get the concerns, but I think this offense is coming around. Tampa Bay, pretty good defense too. Good defensive mind there. They have even though they had fill-in players this week, they didn't have Antoine Winfield kicking around back there at safety. They actually had some fill-in, but they still were playing, solid ball. So, I mean, I get it, because he was somebody who was kind of like, I've noticed a lack of production from, especially compared to a lot of other players we've seen produce that we were not expecting. But it's still early until we see something more definitive by like week 4. Like I said, if he's still not doing nothing by week 4, I'll definitely put him on the panic meter. But for me, and I got a couple shares of this guy, and I was trying to give the benefit of the doubt on him coming into the year, but Anthony Richardson and another guy like you, I'm not saying go run out there and sell the guy. That's not what I'm saying, but I have my peepers fixed on what this guy is doing week to week because I've not been encouraged so far. I understand he had some exciting plays in week 1, big plays, but the fact of the matter is you cannot be buoyed by those forever. Yes, you can make big plays. You can't take them out of the player, but you got to have the other things that players do that keep them relevant in NFL football and ultimately fantasy football. And when you're throwing picks, fumbling the ball, that's not good. And looking at out of the 33 quarterbacks who have played a full game of football this season, at least a full game of football this season, Anthony Richardson has the worst adjusted completion percentage out of all of them, sitting at 58%. And right now, if I can look to tier down to somebody who I think right now would be a great tier down because he's hurt, Jordan Love. If I can get down to him and get I think I get a nice plus on top. That's something I'm looking to do if I don't need the quarterback right now, if I'm rebuilding. Jordan Love, at the end of the day, he's hurt right now, but guess what? He has a big old contract bag of money sitting on beside him that he is locked and loaded for a few years. Or if I can get to Kyler Murray, who just had a huge blow up week, while that's not going to help your chances on the factor of accessibility. But if I can look to him, get something on top, see you later, Anthony Richardson. I get all the hype on him, but this goes back to the original concerns. This is his rawness. And at the end of the day, he can have all the tools. He can do all of the things. He can have all these physical gifts. But if he can't put it together, and if a team is not willing to ride out that struggle with him, that's going to be the question. If a team isn't willing to, if the Colts themselves are not willing to ride out the struggle with him and just kind of let the growing pains hurt without trying to fix too much or do too much with him or put him under too much where he, loses confidence, whatever the case is. There's that argument with Justin Fields out there, but the dude is raw. We know that. And if a team's not willing to ride that out, I think you're going to be in trouble. So again, I'm not saying go sell him right now for whatever you can get. But if I could get Jordan Love or Kyler Murray with a little smidge of plus on top, because I just look at where they're all ranked on Keep Trade Cut, Anthony Richardson is ahead of both of them, I'm going to do it. But if I'm not getting that, if I'm not getting something, I'm willing to ride it out a little bit longer. But like I said, I'm going to be tuning in very heavily week to week to see what we got going on. And this is, I should clarify, because this is primarily for a super flex league that I have concerns. Because in a one quarterback, I can, if Anthony Richardson is just benched tomorrow for whatever reason, not going to happen. If he's going to be benched tomorrow, I can replace a quarterback in a one quarterback much easier than I can in a super flex. So that's why my ears are up that little bit more. I'm willing to take on the risk of Richardson for the reward in that case. But I'm not liking what I'm seeing. There's a lot of, the turnovers, the poor completion percentage. I want to see him with Josh Downs on the field because I do think that is hurting him a little bit. And we don't like what he's doing to the weapons around him either. Jonathan Taylor had a good week, but Michael Pittman struggles. Alec Pierce is the new number 1 tight end or wide receiver there. Excuse me. I don't think that lasts, but a lot of concerns, man, with what's going on with this offense right now. And Anthony Richardson in general. I'd just like to get your temperature on Anthony Richardson and your thoughts right now. What are you thinking, Zach?
Yeah, definitely somebody to start hitting the panic button on, just because there's not much happening in the passing game. Like you said, Bob, when Alec Pierce is the wide receiver 1, it's probably not good for your offense. So agree with you here. My curiosity is piqued at this situation. I don't have many shares of Anthony Richardson, but there's definitely been people knocking on the door for Anthony Richardson. So what you've seen over the first 2 weeks, yes, able to make plays with his legs, able to make incredible throws at certain points, but you need more consistency from Anthony Richardson because at a certain point, the Colts will want to see more consistency from him. So agree with you. This is somebody that my antennas are up, seeing what's out there on the market. I think it'd be really tough right now to turn that into a Jordan Love or a Kyler Murray. But if I could do it, I would. Yeah.
I've seen stranger things happen, man. If I'm being totally honest, I've seen much wilder things happen, but that's kind of where I'd look to be. Obviously, it's hard coming off of a really rough week. Only one touchdown, 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles that were not lost, but they were fumbles. It's going to be tough, but at the end of the day, my concern is like, do I think Anthony Richardson can put it all together and be great? Yes, I think he can do that. However, I think there is equally, if not a greater chance that he turns into the next Sam Howell, Justin Fields hybrid where he's just moved on from. And if I can get out for something more secure and in full transparency, if I had to pay a little bit on Richardson to get to Murray or Love, not anything crazy, 2nd or 3rd round pick, get a pick back, I'm saying see you later to the guy personally. But Zach, with all that said, we got to say see you later to all of you. This episode is over and done. This was a bit of a different format for us. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below what moves you're trying to make this week. We want to hear all about it. And we want to hear from you over in the Discord. Let us know how your season has been going. How's your win-loss record feeling after 2 weeks? How are you feeling heading into week 3? But with all that said, we're going to get the heck on out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.